Question that always people ask, so the Patagonia, is that sponsored by the fund, or is it just the uniform?
I would say it's been obviously a West Coast thing for a long time, but truthfully, I got introduced to the company probably in the late 1990s. I was a big fly fisherman, always have been, and they've always made really great gear. Really enjoyed it. Through that process, we all thought that the capital markets would just really shut down, right? And a lot of companies would go through, valuation down rounds and end up, really cutting deeply, not just cutting fat and cutting muscle, but cutting bone to really lean out their operations. And I think what we saw was a lot of folks definitely got lean. They sort of used the classic never let a crisis go to waste, but kind of got lean and really focused on what's a core to the business for them, and leaned out their operations and ended up seeing a lot of uplift in terms of their customers, where we saw pipelines go from $5 million in pipeline to $35 million in pipeline in like 3 weeks. I think a SPAC is just another way of raising capital, right? And I think you can take a very thematic view of, for companies that can't go IPO, maybe SPAC is the right way. But I think you have to sort of suck out the thematic judgment there and really take a step back and say, well, why is all this happening, and sort of what's causing all this activity? And I think a lot of that just comes down to the amount of capital in the world, right? And the fact that a lot of it has shifted from the public to the private sectors over the last 30 years. I think there's a lot of money out there, including through different sort of limited partners, whether that's endowments, sort of public markets, through specialty vehicles, just across the board, family offices. There's just a lot of money out there. So I don't think it's ever easy to raise money in a fund. I think of every new fund as basically a startup raising capital, but instead of looking for 3 or 4 investors, they're looking for 20 to 40.
Do you think 2021 is going to be just another 2020?
I do. I think it will.
Isn't that
in a
sad?
way that we are really not happy about. I think 2021 is going to feel a lot like 2020, where I would say is that there's just going to be a lot less uncertainty. And so in that regard, I think it's going to feel very different. But I think, if you fast forward 5 to 10 years, they'll have more in common than I think we would want them to, would be my anticipation, which is that I think there's going to be the businesses that have benefited from the pandemic will continue to benefit. I think that, the pain will still be felt sort of across the board. And I think investment in insurtech and fintech is going to continue. And I think for lots of reasons that's going to occur, but I think it's just going to continue to accelerate. We thought 2020 was a black swan, and I think we realized it's actually, maybe in the traditional way, it actually is a black swan, which is much more common than we would prefer to like to think. It's a great question. I've thought about that a lot myself. I don't necessarily have a great answer. I do have an answer which works for me, which is everyone's speaking different languages. Startups need to learn how to communicate and learn from the things that they pick up in conversations with corporates about sensitivities and sort of the political landscape, and who owns the budget, what's the buying criteria, and really those folks there should empathize with those companies that they're trying to sell to. Whereas also corporates should learn what it's like as best they can to start a company where you're worried about payroll and raising capital and retaining your star developer, Jane, who has a great offer from Google, right? They don't always understand sort of those challenges. The football behind me is signed by my favorite football player of all time, which is Brian Dawkins. He was, I'm originally from Philadelphia. Grew up a Philadelphia sports fan, but I was always the less aggressive, more contemplative, maybe Philadelphia fan, but still have that sort of Philadelphia sports streak. Really enjoy early mornings, even though I'm not a morning person. So it's just a quiet time to be awake before the world is. I love Peloton, always on my Peloton, maybe 4 times a week, certainly. That's been really good.